meeting covering two items. Open with kia kia tau mai te maramatanga, kia tau mai te rangi maria, kia tau mai te kaha me te aroha mō tēnei kaupapa hui e tai hie. Welcome. Is there any apologies? I'm not sure if Councillor Greening is online. So online, other than that, I think everybody is present. So no apologies needed. Declarations of interest. None. Late items, no. And then so we'll move to confirmation of minutes. Councillor Greening, do you have a comment in relation to any of the things we've already covered?
Yeah, just the confirmation of minutes. Which minutes are we confirming?
We're at now. We are, rather weirdly, confirming the minutes from Thursday, the 15th of December, 2022.
Yeah. So that's a bit odd because that's 3 years ago. Good luck determining the accuracy of those ones.
It is a bit odd.
But I just want to raise also the question of the 25th of September, given this is the last meeting of council. What will be happening to the 25 September minutes, given that Standing Order, I think 26.4 refers to the CEO signing off on the last meeting, which would be this one, but not the previous one. Okay,
good question. I'll come across to Robin.
Through the chair. Yes, the 22nd of December 2022 minutes are a little bit unusual to be bringing to this meeting, particularly being an extraordinary meeting as well. At the end of a training, we go back and we review all of the meeting papers for the full training to ensure everything is correct, advertised, loaded to the website. And these minutes we have found that they did miss being confirmed in February 2023. So that is why they've come to this meeting. They are, as a procedural item, as per usual, you need to just confirm that they are correct. With regards to the 25th of December minutes, the 25th of September minutes, those minutes were the minutes of the last ordinary meeting of this council. They were not prepared in a final state to go into an agenda or to come to this particular meeting for any confirmation. Under Standing Orders 26.4, the Chief Executive and Mayor will be signing them off. In this particular instance, it will be the Acting Chief Executive and following the Mayor's confirmation. And just a reminder that with regards to minutes, the only thing that you can consider in a meeting or when signing them is that they are an accurate record. So that is all you can do with these minutes. Does that cover your question, Councillor Greening?
I presume it does. And I assume in normal circumstances... sorry, I'll come back to you, Councillor Greening. In normal circumstances where we wouldn't have had an extraordinary council meeting,
exactly,
then the minutes of the last ordinary meeting would be. It so happens we have. Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right. Just so we're clear, Councillor Greening.
Yeah. So just to make quite clear, the standing orders don't refer to ordinary; they refer to the last meeting. Which this is the last meeting, and we did indicate at that last meeting or at the previous meeting, which you're now determining is last, although I think this is the last meeting, but anyway, that we were going to have an extraordinary, which I would have thought those minutes would then be brought to this one, given there was sufficient time to assemble them.
We don't have the resource currently to be able to have turned those minutes around, along with, at the moment, we have, I think, 7 meetings in the last few weeks. On top of that, we are managing election. So sometimes we just cannot get these things done in a time that we would like to get them done.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Greening.
Yeah. So can I just make the following direction, or at least can it be, because I won't see them and I won't be able to approve them, can it be made sure that the issues raised, and clearly when I look over the 22nd of December minutes, there is very little recorded in the minutes over what the discussions were contained, and that has always been my frustration with these minutes, because we're not showing that we've turned our mind to particular issues. We just record what staff have told us, which is already in the agenda anyway. Can I just make sure that my issue raised around the CEO review panel delegation, in particular the reference to remuneration in clause 2A, was raised?
You've raised this a number of times.
I raised it at the 25th of September meeting.
So you did raise it at the 25th of September meeting. So the minutes will not necessarily record the fact that you raised it, given it wasn't.
They're not a verbatim record.
Yeah, I know. I realise that we've had this debate about verbatim or otherwise. So it isn't specifically going to refer to comments that you may have made in relation to that item, although I am sure that both you are aware that you have had ongoing dialogue with the acting CEO. So the issue is absolutely aware, and I have no doubt that the governance staff will reflect on your concerns and ensure that the new council, when it considers the role of reviewing the CEO's remuneration, will bear that in mind when they're making recommendations to the next council about what format and the delegations and the wording specifically of those delegations. So I think you can be assured that your issue will be, has been, and will continue to be at the front.
Well, I've just got no satisfactory response. I'm merely told what clause 2B says, rather the interaction between 2A and 2B. And
yeah, well, so we're not entering into a debate about it today, Councillor Graining, because not on the agenda. You have raised it in relation to the discussion about the minutes, which are also not on the agenda. And
well, they are.
You have had correspondence, ongoing correspondence with the acting CEO. And as I say, I have no doubt the governance staff will be aware that this needs to be clear in any new delegations that the next council will put in place.
I think we've failed in these delegations, but anyway.
Okay, thank you. So we need a mover of those minutes. Moved Councillor McKenzie, seconded Councillor Murray. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And then we'll move on to the first item, which is the Nelson Provincial Museum Archives Research and Collections Facility. Mike, John and Pip.
So I'll just lead off. I've got Mike here with any finance questions and Pip any detail. I think you're all au fait with the project. In the resolution, in the agenda item, we've included Nelson City Council resolution because obviously it's a jointly funded project. I just want to highlight a couple of the resolutions, which is 5 and 6, which is the recommendation around release of funds, because that's contrary to what the trust requested from us, which was to draw down all the funds this year. And resolution number 8, which is the requirements under the trustee, which we've outlined there. I just want you to be really clear that when you're making decisions, there's also some specific requirements under the trustee to decide. So we'll open to any questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Reid. So, Mr. Reid, in terms of the council's recommendation to not allow the early withdrawal of funds, is the trust aware of that?
No, we haven't made that clear to the trust.
Was the trust invited today?
Yes.
Okay. That makes it difficult. Thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Greening.
I'm just trying to get
sorry, Mark. Yeah. I will come back to you. Just
I just think we just need to close the loop on that, Mike. Do you want to just?
Through Mr. Mayor, when we examine the cash flow for the project, we believe that they can meet their obligations without additional funds being advanced earlier than we'd anticipated in our LTP.
Okay, I think that's important clarification, because I'm pretty sure the rationale behind the question was to ensure that we weren't doing something A, they were unaware of, B, that was going to effectively stymie the project through a technicality. So that's clarified that. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Greening, back to you.
Good anticipation, Mike. That's exactly where I was going. So just to re-clarify that, they will be able to purchase the land in this first year. There's nothing holding them back from the acquisition of land, and there is nothing holding them back in terms of any other contractual commitments they might be involved with.
Through Mr. Mayor, as long as the transactions occur as set out in the cash flow and the business plan, then they'll have no difficulties.
Thank you.
Can
Thanks,
I
thanks,
ask,
Mike.
so can I ask why they were asking for it to be brought forward?
Mike, John.
Yeah, the project's 4 months ahead of schedule. I guess that's why there's a requirement there. If you look around the loan facility, that assists them to proceed with the project, but I guess it's because it's ahead of program.
Okay,
Okay,
so
thank you. So they made the request to bring it forward. Our belief is it's unnecessary to bring it forward because of the cash flow outlined in their project. Our understanding is, just so we're all very clear, that this resolution doesn't impinge on their ability to proceed with the project, given that some of the land purchases involve sales and purchases or other arrangements that may exchange the land between parties. So all we really need to know is an assurance from the staff that are presenting the report that this recommendation does not impinge on their ability to proceed with the project.
As far as where currently, it doesn't impinge on that.
Cool, that's all good. Thank you. Councillor Mayling and Councillor Hill.
I'm happy to move this. If I think about our long-term plan, I think funding for this ARC project has been in there for at least 6 years, so 2 iterations. But the actual trust has been working on a solution for close to 20 years for this. And I always had a concern about the project in the centre of the city because it seemed expensive and they couldn't get the central government funding in the end. So this to me is showing that they've thought about their position and come up with a workable solution that is much easier to fund for both themselves and for us. And it's going to be in our district, but that isn't the important issue. The important issue is that we protect the collection going forward, and it's in a very vulnerable position and has been for a number of years. And having visited that with Councillor Walker, I certainly wouldn't want to work in that environment at all. So that's why I'm happy to move this.
So it's moved. Councillor Mayling, is there a seconder before I come to Councillor Hill?
Yes, happy to second. I think the trust has tried to convince councils over that 20 years that this is important, and it's good that we've got there. And you know, I think this has been a very good pivot, nimble pivot by the trust to better come up with the solution that they have, and so I'm very happy that we support it. I just want to check, there's not a way that our assessment of the cash flows missing anything at all, and that when if should their folk be in the room and their accountant be in the room, they might point out something that, no offence, Mike,
Double reassurance is what we're looking for, Mike. Double, triple reassurance.
we're not missing something here. And
It's through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, we have to take the business case and the cash flow that's in there on face value. It's not for staff to be able to second guess what that might be. When I reviewed that business case, nothing of particular concern jumped out at me. And so I think you can rely on the business case. Believe the museum will be well served if you agree to the proposal today.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. You're right, Councillor Mayling. We have done several site visits, and it has been of concern about the sanitary conditions that they were expecting their staff to operate under, plus the risk of us losing this collection. I guess I sit here in two minds really. One is they're not showing today concerns me. The fact that we haven't had the opportunity, or we've chosen not to tell them that they can't draw down that money earlier, and we've got to work off what Mike Drummond has just said is, you know, face value to their business case. Weighing that all up, I guess my question back to you, Mike, is, so if there is something that's not being transparent or boo-boo within their business case, what liabilities that place back on us? Because I know that our neighbours down the road have agreed, finally. So Nelson City Council, Tasman District Council, but what liability comes back to us if there is something missing, aka they can't get the drawdown that you're saying they don't need, but they may need? What does that mean for Tasman District Council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is no liability attached to council. This is a request for grant funding and approval under the trustee to undertake a number of transactions. So there is no liability on council. I'm sure if there were concerns, we would have or have expected the TBHB trustees to have contacted us. This paper and the council resolution has been in the public domain prior to this meeting. It's not a confidential session, and they have not contacted me. I don't believe they've contacted my colleagues with concerns. If I was the trustees, my main concern would be to get the approvals required under the trustee for those transactions and to have that assurance that council has agreed to the funding to allow the project to proceed.
And I think the backstop is 0.9 in the resolution, which is any project cost overruns outside the contingency amount included in the attached business case will not be met by council. So in terms of mitigating / managing any possible future cost, that is a key part of the resolution.
So, a point of clarification, does that mean they can't come back to the new council and request more money?
Of course, they could come back and request more money. Anyone can come. Well, it makes it very clear that they're unlikely to be successful. If I listen to the rhetoric around the proverbial process we're in currently, I suspect they're very, very unlikely to be successful. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I 100% support this, and the only curveball was we recommended not recommending, which I probably wouldn't have supported anyway in terms of bringing it forward. But if the trustees disbanded, doesn't the liability come back on joint councils?
In terms of the overall museum, like if the entire thing completely imploded and Mike.
The TBHT is a charitable trust. So if the trust were to find itself in financial difficulty and the trust was liquidated, there would be no liability on council. There would be, I would expect, considerable political pressure for the council to step in and assist the trust meet its obligations. And that has happened in the past, around 2013-14, when we worked with the trust to put some funding in place and to help them with their arrangements with Westpac Bank.
And happy to support this. They went through a hell of a process with our neighbours to get this through, or actually, to be fair, with one of our neighbours to get this through. So I'm pleased it's here.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murray. If there's nothing further, I will put the resolution. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And next up, we have the financial delegations to the Chief Executive Officer. Doug, welcome. Steve, thank you. This, I think, is now the third time we've considered this item at a council meeting. So I will hand over to Steve. Are you leading it?
I will, through you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, councillors. So as the Mayor's just said, this paper has been before council just as recently as last week, so it's well known to councillors. This meeting, which we were unaware of at the time that we last brought the paper, was that has enabled us to bring it back to full council after having been through the Audit and Risk Committee, which those of you might recall from our June meeting when this paper first came to council. It's not like it's just turned up in the last couple of weeks. So in June, we were asked, A, if we could bring it back this triennium, and B, if we could go through audit and risk. And the timetabling of those two events meant that we couldn't meet both until this extraordinary meeting was scheduled. So that's why we bring it back to you today. Audit and Risk discussed the paper yesterday. And the discussion at Audit and Risk Day, it was noted the comments of Audit New Zealand with regard to good practice. It was acknowledged that there is a balance that needs to be struck between sufficient delegation and an effective and transparent process. And it was noted that the CE's delegation only extended to expenditure approved through adopted plans or council resolutions. In addition, external members of the committee spoke in support of the paper, and they remarked that the current delegation was low in the context of the current market and their experience with other councils, and it could contribute to a less rigorous adherence to recognised good practice. Responding to a question from the chair, staff confirmed that the new process includes strengthened reporting to audit and risk with respect to procurement activity. And committee member Elstob remarked that a course of action could be that the delegation is increased in line with the recommendation with a review in 12 months to consider the ongoing need for that delegation, and this would align with timeframe for the council's consideration of the LTP. So with those remarks from yesterday's meeting said, I am open to any further questions that you might have or conversation.
Thank you. Councillor Greening, sorry, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Greening. Councillor Dakey.
Thank you very much, through the chair. So as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee, I think that a good conversation was had yesterday. It was really pleasing to see that the two external members supported this approach. It was pleasing to hear that Audit New Zealand had reviewed the approach and were happy with it on the basis that we're lifting our level of maturity within the council around our procurement system. We've invested in that. We want to make sure that we get the efficiencies that come from it, given that we are moving to a whole of life system. I think that this is a good move by the council, and happy to move it. Thank you.
Okay, so it's been moved. Councillor Mackenzie, is there a seconder before I go through the list of?
I'm happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so seconder Deputy Mayor Bryant, I'll come back to you if you wish to speak. I've got a number of speakers listed. So I've got, just for clarity, I've got Councillor Greening next, then Councillor Dakey, Councillor Ellis and Councillor Walker currently. Councillor Greening.
Thanks. I asked some questions at the last meeting, and I'm just wondering if they were put to order. I was reassured they would be.
What were the questions?
Okay, well, that probably answers the question then. So my question was, just in terms of the wording, it refers to LTP or annual plan or resolution. My concern with that wording was there was no priority given between the particular documents in terms of quantum, in terms of project. For instance, the annual plan might remove a project that the LTP has, or a subsequent resolution might reduce the amount of money. So I'm just wondering, given it's an or, is that supposed to be the more recent one, the larger one? How is that wording supposed to operate? I think it needs to be clarified, especially given the confusion around the CEO review panel delegations. But also in relation, I had a question around the financial year, which I also was told would be asked, which is, should the delegation be executed in respect of the financial year that they were talking to, so that there's no confusion that we're bringing stuff or talking about larger outer year funding of projects that are mentioned in the year that we're in. And that wasn't clear to me either. The other question I had was, and this is more a recent question, but I'll let those two sit, but I have some more questions following the answer to those two. So were those questions asked? Because I was reassured they would be.
Through there. My apologies if they weren't asked specifically. I do recall the conversation that we had, particularly around the plans. And my comment, which you should take as an answer, is that regardless of which of those three avenues has currency or primacy, all three of those are authorising environments for expenditure, whether it happens in the long-term plan, whether it happens in the annual plan, or whether it happens by resolution of council. And it may be that the delegation then acts on any one of those authorisations, depending on the project and how and which it is brought before council.
So that's my concern, is that the long-term plan might authorise something, but then the annual plan has removed it. Is that still then authorised? And which one does the CEO refer to?
No, it's not authorised. through the chair, if there's no, it's not authorised.
Right. So
So
then, which
so the
one
chief
takes
executive
precedence?
wouldn't be able to exercise, in this case, her delegation because it wasn't authorised expenditure.
But the wording says or.
Either or of those three mechanisms can authorise expenditure.
Yes, I'm just
Expenditure
wondering
can be
whether
authorised in the long-term plan or the annual plan or by resolution of council.
Yeah, so I wonder whether the wording should be more precisely articulated, because or means you can pick any three, regardless of any priority. Perhaps the wording should be maybe more precisely articulated along the lines of let's see.
So the author of the document, so Steve is obviously the reporting, but Doug is the author. Councillor Greening's question / comment / view. Do you have a view? And secondly, because I'm listening to the people over here on my left who are responsible for formulating the resolution, does it, either to Councillor Greening and or Doug, does the change from or to and make it better, worse, or not? Either.
Through the mayor, when I'm happy with it as it is, when a procurement plan comes forward, on the procurement plan is shown the budget that is paying for it, and the person who is the budget holder has to sign that that budget still exists and they have put that money aside and they're not going to spend it twice, for want of a better phrase. And therefore, if the budget was in the LTP and has been removed in the annual plan, there would not be budget, and the budget holder would not have the budget and therefore couldn't sign it.
Okay, I mean, I think it's reasonably clear, but
Well, I thought it was reasonably clear in the CEO review, but apparently other people interpret it differently.
You interpret it differently, so that's not necessarily everybody or all people.
Fair reading. So I'm just okay. I hear what you're saying. I'm just want to make sure that there is no there, and I've heard reassurance from staff that won't happen. I hope that reassurance is recorded in the minutes somewhere, so that we have some direction to the CEO that should be the case. Because at the moment, I don't have confidence in the current wording that because it could be interpreted in a different way as well.
Through the mayor, Councillor Greening, I'm prepared to accept your wording if it gets this over the line. I think the conversation is leading us to a point where we're debating and or, and I'm ambivalent between the two, because I'm not seeking that the chief executive has a delegation to spend money to which there has not been approval given. So if there is wording that you're more happy with, suggest it and we will make the change.
Right, okay. So so I would like, given that the staff, or if it's staff or Doug has made mention of the fact of the process that they're going to go through, that is recorded in the minutes, because that will be direction to the interpretation that you have applied to these words. And if
you can't really rely on the minutes to be the key. If there's better wording that makes it clearer, it needs to be in the policy, not relying on someone recommending or remembering that the minutes picked it up. It can't be done that way.
Right. So here's my initial suggestion, but I think maybe we need to tease this out a little bit further. And maybe today is not the day to do it, given we don't have a great deal of time. But I would suggest all procurement must remain within the funding already approved by specific council resolution, or where there is no specific council resolution, in the relevant annual plan, or where there is no annual plan, the long-term plan, which gives a hierarchy and a process to work through, rather than the other way around. I'd also add, and since I'm talking about amendments, I'll talk about another one, which is I think that the procurement needs to be related to the financial year in which the delegation is executed, and that's not clear from, again, what's in here, although you could imply it from that wording, perhaps, given the preceding discussion. So I wonder whether that should be there. And I also think, given that the general discussion relates to maintenance and renewals, at least they're the examples provided,
So,
maybe the
part of my concern is so what we always ask is if you've got amendments to make, it would be really preferable to send the wording through because now we're trying to do it on the fly. Secondly, it would appear as though you're working under the presumption that the CEO kind of just wakes up in the morning and decides to make a decision to spend money. The entire process that is laid out in this document about procurement has a whole range of checks and balances and processes to ensure that by the time it arrives at the CEO, multiple people will have had to determine whether or not there is a budget, whether that budget is sufficient to make a recommendation to get through. It's not like this.
Yes, I appreciate it. But I'm also concerned that we have already acknowledged that the council's in a rather financially precarious position, and that's, I think, the wording that the CEO used announcing the restructure. We should be actually reviewing our financial position.
So that is Councillor Greening. So that is the council's decision, and the council, prior to this delegation being exercised, has now approved an annual plan. Will the new council approve a new annual plan before reviewing the 10-year plan? I'm just not convinced that the semantics around the wording are important in the context of the entire process that any one of these projects has to go through before it arrives on the desk of the CEO to exercise their delegation.
Well, my concern is that these are very large, shall we say, buses to drive through, and quite wide interpretations can be taken. Again, I'm going to come back to the other amendments, which is I think all approved funding must only be for maintenance or renewals. There is, I think, a concern, and I know there's been an acknowledgement that that we can adopt a community interest test. But again, who's determining that? Is that a subjective test? Is that an objective test? What is the criteria for that? It's all left very, very open. And my experience with the interpretation of other delegations is you tend to drive buses through them, or just interpret white dogs as black cats. So
I think
we need to be quite precise with the language. That's all.
You've suggested some changes to the wording.
Yes.
The mover has indicated they don't wish to change the wording in line with what you're suggesting. So your only option is to therefore move an amendment, which would need to be specific as opposed to just general. And then I will look for a seconder for the amendment if you wish to move one.
Okay, so I'll then look to make some amendments because there is probably four actually that I want to move. So I'll state them. Do you want me to email them to Robin so you have a copy of them, or are you going to?
No. You just need no. You can email them if you've got them right there, but we don't have time for you to sit down and start writing emails. Move the amendment with specifics now, or we're moving on.
Okay. So 2.1. I just want to also get clarity on and this is another question before I move these amendments, because this is part of the amendment. It says delegation from 1 to 5 million. Just understanding why below 1 million, when I'm getting the sense that it needs to be up. It needs to be up to 6 million. Why are we not? Thanks, Doug.
What 1 to 6 million? The current delegation for the CEO is up to $1 million.
Yes.
What we are asking is that current delegation be replaced by one that is up to $6 million.
So what does it say, 1 to $6 million?
Because we're going from 1 to 6.
Yeah, but that delegation will have been removed by this one.
Well, I guess.
So shouldn't it be up to 6 million?
Mark, if you're going to ask a question, let Doug answer.
Okay, the delegation itself in the delegations register is highly likely to say up to 6 million. However, for clarity of what is going on and to make sure that I was very clear for what people we were trying to do, we have said we want to move it from $1 million to 6 million.
So the
That is the
resolution
change.
says 126. The
Yes.
policy doesn't say 126.
No, well, the policy doesn't mention the CEO's delegation because the policy relies on the delegations. So before we can spend money, when people come to me, I have to know that they have a delegation to spend. Otherwise, they're whistling Dixie.
Yeah, but the
Okay,
delegation
fantastic.
will just
Okay, we'll
say
leave it there
up
then.
to.
Yeah, that's fine.
Should the resolution pass, the delegation will say up to 6. It will not say 126.
One,
No,
two,
it'll
six.
say up to 6.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for the clarity.
Okay, move your amendment.
So my resolution amendments are to the
If
bullet
anyone
points.
sees.
Are to the bullet points. So I was going to suggest up to 5 million, but we'll leave it as 1 to 6. All procurement must remain within the funding already approved by specific council resolution, or where no specific resolution, in the relevant annual plan, or where no annual plan, the long-term plan, Next bullet point, all procurement must be for the same financial year in which the delegation is executed, and new point, all approved funding must only be for maintenance or renewals. Then I come down.
You do realise we've got some people trying to write this down, so can you just speak a little slower?
Well, this is why I was suggesting I email it through.
Has he got it written?
Okay. All right, we'll run it that way. Run through them. If you get a seconder, we'll try and work out the details of exactly what you've stated with all your colons and semicolons.
If I may, through the mayor, you need to be clear about your reference to multiple financial years, because limiting to the delegation to one financial year would likely run counter to the government rules of sourcing and best practice around whole of life consideration. So I would suspect that we might tie ourselves in a particular knot in that regard.
So are you suggesting that the delegation to the CEO would effectively be allowing her to bring forward spending for whole of life? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, I'm not, because the delegation is about the total of a procurement that she seeks to make, not necessarily. The delegation doesn't necessarily give her the right to determine when that occurs. That will be driven by the procurement plan and the process which leads up to it. So this is just about approving a quantum.
Yes, that's right. So that would make sense then to make sure that it's parallel to the annual plan year that you're looking to execute that delegation for. Hence why all procurement must be for the financial year in which the delegation is executed.
Except that best practice would indicate, and government rules of sourcing requires you to take the whole of life consideration of the contract that you're entering into. So a 3-year contract, for example, at $1 million a year is a $3 million procurement exercise. It happens across 3 financial years.
Correct.
Yeah.
So limiting the delegation to one financial year would not allow the chief executive to sign a $3 million whole of life contract.
Right. So you're effectively executing further out years and bringing them forward for the year that you want to engage.
No, you're not bringing them forward at all, because the expenditure has occurred.
Well, you're committing to them. You're committing to future years.
Mark, just finish moving your amendment. We'll look for a seconder. If we get one, we'll have to work out the exact wording that you have stated. So can you just conclude what it is you're moving?
So those are the words under 2.1. That I also wanted to add a note under 2.2, and that notes that any funding that would reasonably be expected to be subject to review in the next LTP should not be approved by the CEO until approved in the next LTP. And this is my concern, is that there may be things that we are committing to or procuring to that really need to be reviewed in the next LTP before we actually commit to them. And I appreciate they may have been approved in the last LTP, but as history has already shown, we keep resetting that long-term plan, given the worsening financial position of this council. And I would not want to see a commitment to procurement that we really don't want to go down to, because we really need to review our LTP and our annual plan commitments before we then enter that procurement. And my concern is that we may end up being committed to some procurement that we don't necessarily, and I know there's been a discussion around community interest, but again, there's no detail around that. where the community
Mark,
interest.
you're branching way away from the procurement policy into the council decision making around.
No,
Ultimately, the crucial that is why it is so important that when councils approve, firstly the 10-year plan, and then every year the annual plan, that they are absolutely cognizant.
My understanding at the community at the audit meeting was there was discussion around community interest.
Councillor Graney, the decisions that the council makes in the annual plan absolutely should be very cognizant of the multi-year impacts of decisions that they make and projects that they put in and budgets that they approve, many of which in the 10-year plan will extend over multiple years. So that is the responsibility of the people around the table in governance.
That's why I think
ultimately, once the council has made those decisions, then the council staff need to be able to execute those decisions in the most efficient and effective way possible. That is what this is all about. Ensuring at the time that the process they go through very consciously considers multi-year contracts in a way that accounts for the whole of life cost. That is one of the key things that this entire new policy is intended to pick up. That is an improvement in the process and the rigor around approving those contracts.
Well, I don't think it's going to pick up. I don't think it's going to pick up all of whole of life anyway. So there's no big deal there. You're not going to pick up every contract for whole of life with a $6 million threshold. So you've already compromised that approach anyway.
If it doesn't pick up the whole of life contract cost in the $6 million, it will come to the council and the tenders committee, because that's where the next step in the delegation is. So there is no missing piece or gap or hole that exists that somebody, either the CEO or the tenders panel or ultimately the council, has to approve.
So again, I'm going to come back to, there was a discussion at the audit meeting, I understand, around community interest and making sure that you're not procuring things that are in the community interest. That's why I raised that particular note around the next LTP. Personally, I think we're rushing into this. This is a logical place to go, but I think we've got our timing wrong, as we always do, cart before horse. This should really come after we've reset that long-term plan and we are very clear where we're going. Because at the moment, my concern is this is basically a delegation from council for the CEO to embark on projects that might be in their long-term plan now, but really when we revisit that long-term plan, they may not be there.
Well, they may not be, but that's a subsequent council conversation. At the end of the day, they currently exist.
Can I just finish? You keep on cutting across me.
Mark, you've been now talking on and off for going on 20 minutes.
Because you keep interrupting me, Tim. You keep interrupting me.
Mark, what I'm trying to do, I told you 5 minutes ago at least to just move your amendments. You've asked multiple questions since for clarification. Move your amendments. I'll look for a seconder.
Okay, so that was the wording of my amendments, the notes and the 3 bullet points. Do I have a seconder?
I'll ask that question. Is there a seconder? The motion lapses for want of a seconder. So we'll now move on with the. Thank you. We'll now move on with the substantive resolution as moved by Councillors Mackenzie and seconded by Councillor Deputy Mayor Bryant and a number of other speakers. So I've got Councillor Dakey, Councillor Ellis and Councillor Walker.
Thank you, through the Mayor. To Doug and Steve, thank you for the process. I think if we look back at just reflection on how we got here, we look back at July when it first came to council, we had a 5-page report which had a number of delegation of 10 million, right? I think if we look at that, we probably say it wasn't enough and maybe elected officials were involved. We went away, we had a workshop, much better space to be. And I think on reflection too, involving audit and risk needed to happen. Great, it went there yesterday, extra confidence now, and also Audit New Zealand have had a look at it as well. So very robust process now. And I think the other thing we could take out of that is involving those independent committee meetings in workshops in the future could be key, both from audit and risk and say enterprise. Let's get them in on it and bring them in-house, and then we're all up to speed. So good process. We've been through it. I think we all understand it now. It's just one of those things, some things need more elected member education than other things. And I think we've arrived at that point. Very happy that it's been through a robust process and happy to support it at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dakey. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'd like to offer my thanks on this. I mean, when it first came across the table, it looked like one thing, and it certainly alarmed me a little. But as we've worked through the process and all the explanations, it has certainly made it a good option. I just wanted to get some clarification. After watching the Audit and Risk Committee yesterday, and I do note that one of the independent members say it could be a lower delegation. So that's something we could consider, and it would still be quite effective. And I do appreciate how supportive of this process they have been. But there's two things I would like to clarify. It's one, we did talk about the review, and can we have some clarification or reassurance about when and how that will be reviewed? Because I think some of the misinformed commentary out there is about this as being rushed through, and it's certainly not what is true. So can we just have some clarification about where that is going to go for review and how it gets into the schedule in a year's time as recommended by the Audit and Risk Committee? And two, when we've talked about the reporting, how that reporting will be done. And my assumption is that if the delegation is used, that part of that reporting will be that, yes, we have used this delegation. What's it going to look like so that elected members retain good understanding of what projects have moved forward, what's moved back, because it could have that effect, so that there is good oversight over there.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll take the last one first because it's top of mind. Yes, the reporting that goes back to the Audit and Risk Committee will, by default, include when the delegation is used, because if the Chief Executive signs anything, irrespective of its amount, then it will be exercising a delegation. So that will come back and we will look at, we haven't defined fully yet how that report might look, but it will categorise. And I think the chair of the Audit and Risk made a number of observations yesterday about the sorts of things that could be included in that report. The types of procurements, the nature of their timeframes, the amount of them, and those sorts of things we would expect to see through, so that we could provide elected members through Audit and Risk with some visibility of the types of procurements that are going on. With respect to your first question, this paper doesn't actually recommend that there is a formal review of the Chief Executive's delegation. It was a suggestion that was made by Committee Member Elstob yesterday, and it is for debate and discussion for this council to decide if that's something that you would like us to incorporate in the recommendations that are before you.
Yeah. So 12-month review?
Yeah.
So we can add, well, subject to the agreement of the mover and seconder, if we have a 2-point whatever that says that the policy be reviewed 12 months.
The delegation, the policy and the delegation?
Was it? Oh, no, it's more the delegation, really.
More the delegation.
I think it's the delegation as opposed to, so the delegation be reviewed within 12 months. Include, yep. Okay, thank you. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. It's quite a hard decision to make when it's an extraordinary meeting, the very last meeting of this triennium. And I know that we started in July and we started at 10, we got it down to 6. I'm not so sure my community has that much of an appetite to have it at 6. The policy itself I feel comfortable with, because as Councillor Dakey said, we got some clarity. We were able to have a workshop. So thank you for the work that you put in, Doug, to bring that back to us. But it's kind of a bit like Plan Change 81. But Plan Change 81 we put through because there was a little window of opportunity for the minister for us to get an exemption. For this, I'm sitting there going, why are we pushing it through in the 11th hour when we've got 5 councillors not going to be here, or probably more actually, for next term? And do we know that there's actually a payment pending out there that requires us to rush this through today? That's my first question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's actually 2 answers there. There's no payment pending that requires us to rush anything through. And this is coming back this triennium because councillors asked for it to be brought back this triennium. And that's why it came to the last meeting and wasn't scheduled to be on the agenda for audit and risk, because it was required that it came back to the last meeting of council, which was a week ago. When this meeting was then scheduled, it afforded the opportunity to both go to audit and risk and this meeting. So I want to absolutely lay dead the notion that we are trying to squeeze something in at the end of the triennium. This is back before you today because it was your request that we resolved at this triennium.
So if I may, through you, thank you for that clarification, because, you know, as a councillor from my community, I get asked this all the time. So it would be wrong of me not to share their voice at the table today. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is, yes, it came to audit and risk. And yes, we did have somebody within our team turn around and say it could be lower. So I have an appetite to put this through, but not at the 6 mil. I would foreshadow it to be at 4.
Okay, thank you. If the resolution is not passed, I will come back to you to move your alternative resolution, as you have foreshadowed. Very good use of process. Yeah, Councillor Kitamont, then Councillor Murray.
Thank you. Through you, Chairman. I can't support it the way it is. But having said that, I do agree with the review, 12-month review. Can you just clarify what does that mean, Weebit? Is a report going to come to the next council in 12 months' time?
Through the Mayor, very likely. We would do this all over again in 12 months' time, but Amy might have a...
My expectation of a review of the delegation would be that we would look at all the procurement that has happened in the last 12 months, the value of that procurement, some of the risks around that procurement and where it was approved, so that we make sure that the procurements are going to the right panel and that we haven't got risky or high value things going to the wrong area. And I expect that you would get a view of what has gone to which panel and be able to look at it as a whole and say, oh no, we're not comfortable, or we're happy that that's what went to that forum.
Excellent. Thank you.
And secondly, the delegated authority limit of $6 million. Looking at what the other councils that you put in your report, two councils there are above 5 million. I honestly don't think that 6 million, I think is too much, and I've had the community in my ear, like Councillor Walker's, and even $4 million is quite a high delegated authority limit. And I know whole of life is now put into it, but with the review period in 12 months' time, you could review that delegated limit then, I understand. So I'm in favour of 4. And I've got one last question. The probity auditor, this is probably for Doug, is a new role. Is this going to be another FTE to go to our staff?
Probity auditor. The probity auditor role for everything up to the 5 million at this point in time in policy is me. And that is because I am independent and never have a vote on any of the procurements. So over that sum, we would engage, like they did for waste, someone from, say, McFall or Audit New Zealand to act as the probity auditor. There's kind of 2 types of probity audit. there's the one that comes after you've done the job and reads all the documents and tells you were good, bad, or indifferent. And then there is the one which I prefer, which attends all the meetings and sees the documents before they're released and everything to make sure that the probity is maintained throughout the process. The only time we would go outside council for that is on the very large ones, basically on what we claim to be large. The probity audit is done by me and covers off issues like means that the council is demonstrating its ethics and integrity in its procurements, acting fairly, impartially, with integrity, accountable, transparent, trustworthy, acting lawfully, managing conflicts of interest, and protecting the supplier's commercially sensitive and confidential information. And there's a list of other things that I have to do as the probity auditor to make sure, and then I attend all the meetings.
Yeah. So the answer to the question is no, it's not an FTE.
Yep.
It may involve the contracting in of specific resources from the required with the required expertise for the larger projects.
Yep.
Thank you.
So that's set at $5 million. The probity, you can do it up to $5 million. Outside of that, you have to get an external probity auditor in.
Yeah, that's what the policy says at this point in time.
So could we not set the CEO delegated authority limit to 5 million as opposed to 6 then?
So you can do whatever you like.
Oh no, I'm just.
The resolution is being moved. If the resolution is not passed, we will come back to Councillor Walker. Correctly utilise standing orders by foreshadowing a further resolution. At this stage, you can have an opinion on the resolution as been moved, but ultimately your question of can't we do something? Well, yes, we can, but we're in a process whereby we have to consider the resolution first. Okie dokie. I think there was someone else now. Oh, Councillor Murray, my apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and apologies because I guess I'm one of the reasons why we're back here today in terms of not supporting this previously. So I'm still not at 6 million. So I probably don't need to say anything more than hoping that we'll get the foreshadow motion and then possibly encourage Councillor Walker to look at 3 million. But okay, like the work that's done, the policy that's done, I'm absolutely happy with. The level I can't get over. I probably walked in the door still at 1 million, so getting to 3 would be good. But it will be what the table will vote.
Well, yes. Okay, so unless there's anything further, before I come to Councillor Mackenzie for her right of reply, I just want to reiterate a couple of things. One is, I'm not sure the dollar figure is the most important thing. It is important that it's set at a figure that doesn't just get us back to where we started, which is an inefficient, non-productive process. So like if it's 5, I'm neither here nor there. I'm happy with 6. I was actually happy with 10. Because the crucial thing is everything that leads up to that figure. And that is what I think we slightly lost sight of. I wouldn't apologise to anyone. I don't think anyone needs to apologise for not supporting the resolutions previously, because in actual fact, as Councillor Dakey mentioned, we didn't have sufficient information in that first report in order for us to make the right decision or a good decision. I think we now do have, and I think the extra steps and the time that was taken and the processes that have been worked through subsequently, including the second resolution that came back to council, the subsequent step that went through audit and risk, has put us in a much better position to make a good decision. So yeah, I don't think anyone needs to apologise for not supporting it previously, because actually it probably wasn't in a position where we should have supported it. So that said, the last point I'd like to make is there is no last minute. Like at the end of the day, we are elected, we remain councillors through to the 17th of October. And it's a short time frame, 3 years, as you all know, and you've been here. The first 3 months, there's not a great deal because everyone's trying to get up to speed. You're going through induction. There's kind of a bit of a lost period at the start. So you're really only 2.5 years. And some people are only here for 3 years. So I would expect people want to, exercise the role that the community has given them for that extent. And it begs the question, if there was to be a stopped work, when would it be? Is it 6 months, 3 months? Do we have a hierarchy of decisions? Do we need a policy about we are elected for a period of time, and up until the end of the period of time, we are just making decisions. We're not doing them in a, in a different way or a different format or a different process. We just make decisions, and ultimately the next council will make some subsequent decisions, which may or may not align with the decisions that this council made, but that will all become apparent after firstly the 10th of October and then the 17th, which I understand is the actual day that we all cease being councillors. So I'm thoroughly supportive of the resolution as moved and seconded. I'd also like to reiterate the thanks to Doug, Steve, everyone who's been involved in bringing and going back several times and responding to the very legitimate questions and concerns that were raised at the various stages they were brought up. So with that, I'll come across to Councillor McKenzie for her right of reply.
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support the review addition into the resolution. It's always good practice to review that, and in actual fact it might be when we review it we realise that 6 million is too low and that should be increased to 10. So on that basis I'm happy to support that. Just want to restate what Mayor King said. I mean, anybody that adopts the narrative that we're rushing this through at the last minute when it's actually been work in progress for months, and prior to that, you know, we've supported the lifting and capability around the procurement in the council. Supporting that narrative, it just reminds you that often it's hard for members of the public to get the full context of what we're actually doing in council, and that there's always more than what is portrayed in certain channels. You know, and also I think it was a good process to put it through the Audit and Risk Committee. You know, as a council, we pay separately for that professional expertise from those two independent members, and so it was good to get their endorsement. It was good to hear in that committee the full endorsement from Audit New Zealand, and of course when it was voted on yesterday at the Audit and Risk Committee, it was a unanimous vote. So on that basis, yeah, I encourage everyone to support the resolution as it now reads on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. All those, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Division was called.
Right, we will backtrack somewhat and do it via division.
Deputy Mayor Bryant.
For.
Councillor Butler.
For.
Councillor Daihe.
For.
Councillor Dowler.
For.
Councillor Ellis.
Against.
Councillor Greening.
Against.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Walker.
Against.
Councillor Shellcrest.
For.
Councillor Maru.
Against.
Councillor Mayling.
For.
Councillor McKenzie.
For.
Councillor Kinnenmont.
Against.
Mayor King.
For.
Carried 9-5.
So the resolution was carried 9-5. Right, so that concludes the items for the extraordinary council meeting. So at which I fervently hope is the last council meeting of any type that we have to have between now and the due dead dates of the 10th of October and or the 17th. So thank you for everyone's input, conversation, discussion, and ultimately resolution. I will close with kia ora kia. Kia hiki te kōrero, kia wātea, kia mama, kia te manawa o te tangata, kia uke te ara mō tātou e ora nei, ko rongo, kia runga, kia tina, hui e, tai ki e.